Ascent Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Move to the Edge, Declare It Center, Practices and Processes for Creatively Solving Complex Problems by Everett Harper. Narrated by Midnite Michael. Publisher's Note: in this audio edition, you will hear references to visual elements present in the print and ebook formats of the book. While the publisher and author have used their best efforts in preparing this book, they make no representations or warranties with respect to the accuracy or completeness of the contents of this book, and specifically disclaim any implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. No warranty may be created or extended by sales representatives or written sales materials. The advice and strategies contained herein may not be suitable for your situation. You should consult with a professional where appropriate. Further, readers should be aware that websites listed in this work may have changed or disappeared between when this work was written and when it is read. Neither the publisher nor authors shall be liable for any loss of profit or any other commercial damages, including but not limited to special, incidental, consequential, or other damages. Preface. July 7th, 2016. Stand Up, Speak Up. I was reading a post by Ellen McGirt, senior editor at Fortune magazine, called "Why Employers Need to Talk About Shootings of Black People," after 24 hours of drifting in waves of despair about the murders of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile. Her article highlighted the need for employers to go beyond the idea of inclusion to the more resonant emotion of compassion. She argued that when two black men are killed by police, one at a traffic stop in front of his 4-year-old daughter, employers must recognize that their employees, like much of the rest of the country, are likely to be deeply affected. I nodded my head with her clear, fierce call to employers to go beyond their comfort zone. And then I realized I'm the employer. I'm the CEO of Trust, a highly diverse, remote-first software development company. My co-founders and I worked hard to make our company inclusive, using radical candor to address issues that many companies avoid. But news of these murders required more of me. First, as a black man, I felt unmoored and vulnerable. There is no sign on my car, nor a logo on my jacket that reads, "Don't shoot, I'm a CEO." At the same time, part of my job as a CEO is to set a foundation so our employees can continue to do great work. My silence would be turning away from that responsibility. I needed to write a speech that acknowledged that while I'm a leader, I'm also a target. This is what I wrote that afternoon to the Trustles, our employees. Many of my friends are calling in black today. Much respect. For those who can't or who choose not to, it's a hard day to grapple with 2 police murders of black men while still maintaining our professional demeanor and standards of excellence. Note, we do that every day. Today is harder. If you have a work colleague who is black or who is connected deeply to these shootings, please read Ellen's article. We're all whole people, and understanding how trauma affects work can make this a better company for everyone. We can't have the benefits of a diverse and vibrant company without acknowledging when it gets hard. Today is one of those days for me. And as an employer, it feels awkward, challenging, and necessary to address it. Personally, I'm exhausted, so I'm not up for engaging in conversation. But I can create a tone and space where trussels can engage without fear of reprisal, toxicity, or indifference. Let it be so. However you choose to engage, at minimum, read Ellen's article, take a moment to reflect, and take care of each other. This was one moment when I moved to my edge. When I had to step into the unknown, feeling uncertain, and decide how to address a complex issue. I suspect you have encountered this moment too, like the other leaders you will read about in this book. What you will learn is how to stand up, speak up, and move forward anyway. You will learn how to practice, so when the moment comes, you are centered and ready to provide the leadership your team, company, and our communities need. Introduction. Once in a generation, there is an event that fractures our experience. The summer of 2020 offered three: protest against racial injustice, massive forest fires in the western United States, and a worldwide pandemic. We can't unsee the knee on George Floyd's neck, supernatural orange smoke skies, or the faces of intubated elders dying of COVID alone. Many of us had to respond to these unprecedented events and make decisions without guidelines or playbooks. Should we ask people to keep working while they're at risk of exposure to COVID? How do we support our teammates during the workday while they are simultaneously acting as elementary school teachers to their children? Let's be honest. How many of us froze when we didn't know the answer to those questions? I know I did. We're all susceptible to these responses. Some are rooted in neurochemistry, the well-known flight or fight response. But others are rooted in our inherited leadership and management models based on 19th century factories, where systems were well understood and problems had a singular right answer. We've been rewarded since kindergarten for raising our hand first with the right answer, preparing us to be decisive adult leaders. But 21st century problems like racial injustice, climate change, and pandemics are complex. The key property of complex systems is that they are not well understood. There are many unknowns, and problems often do not have a singular right answer. As a result, there is a risk of causing unintended harm. In short, the 19th century management model is a mismatch for today's leaders navigating complex systems. Many of us know it. In the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic, as we realized that the impact was not measured in weeks, but months, I compared strategies with highly experienced, successful leaders. Out of the public spotlight, they were anxious and flummoxed, and they finally admitted, with grief and exhaustion, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I don't have the right answer. The fissures that opened this decade are a vivid wake-up call that the new normal is complex, and we need new mindsets, processes, and practices to match. Move to the Edge Declared Center is a framework to help leaders of organizations and teams navigate through complex problems when they don't have the right answer and there's no predetermined plan, playbook, or procedure. Move to the Edge is a set of practices, processes, and infrastructure to address complex problems, and Declare It Center is a set of methods to systemize, scale, share, and sustain the best approaches throughout an organization. This book emerges from two distinct sources. First, from my experience as CEO and co-founder of my company, Trust. Since 2011, we have developed human-centered software to help our clients navigate complex, global, consequential problems, from helping to fix healthcare.gov to modernizing supply chain and delivery logistics systems for some of the largest organizations in the world. We built a company that's been remote first for over a decade, exceeds our industry in diversity and inclusion, and is anchored by a values-driven culture that helped us stay connected through the pandemic. The second source is a lifetime of being on the edge, navigating the pursuit of excellence from the distinct vantage point of being an outsider. While I have a history of firsts, first in my family to go to college, first NCAA national champion in any sport for Duke University, as a black man in the United States, those firsts do not protect me from being a target of racial violence and discrimination. Every routine traffic stop has the potential for a deadly outcome. And despite being the keynote speaker at the Techstars Startup Conference, I was singled out by an armed security guard at the entrance. "Do you belong here?" For me and other outsiders, navigating uncertainty is first a survival skill, then an expertise, and finally, a gift. But it comes at a cost. The pressure and weight can deplete one's energy and lead to burnout. To avoid this, I've centered on different interior practices to prepare me for making high-stakes decisions under stress. In uncertain times with complex problems, leaders need interior practices as a companion for their exterior organizational practices. Move to the edge, declare it center is a framework that integrates both, and I will share these practices in depth throughout this book. We're living in a new normal. We have urgent, complex challenges to address, and 20th century tools don't work for 21st century problems. Leaders need to approach today's complex systems with a different mindset, led by curiosity and experimentation, while building systems to scale, share, and sustain their best solutions. Move to the edge, declare it center is a framework of exterior and interior practices that will enable you to make better decisions under uncertainty and complexity. Two kinds of problems: complicated and complex. One of the key contributions to our understanding of complex systems comes from the Santa Fe Institute, a nonprofit research institute using direct observation and mathematical modeling to explain important phenomena. In particular, categorizing problems as complex versus complicated helps to explain why some of our approaches to problem solving can make things worse. Complicated problems. Complicated problems consist of elements whose behaviors and interactions are more well understood, often linear, and therefore predictable. For example, let's say you want to build a passenger jet. If you have a plan, hire expert designers, gather builders, and have enough money, you'll probably succeed in building a jet. Even though building a jet is neither simple nor cheap, the relationships between all the parts and labor are well understood. When there is a complicated problem to solve, such as how to reduce the cost of making a jet, the best approach is to optimize those predictable relationships. Sourcing the same rotor from a cheaper supplier, standardizing quality measurements, or negotiating for lower labor wages are logical approaches to solving the complicated problem of reducing costs. Great operational leaders focus on building with efficient, measurable, repeatable execution. This is an advanced version of a model that emerged out of Frederick Taylor's scientific management in the late 19th century. Taylor did time and motion studies of workers in factories, creating scientific models that included workers as part of the equation. The promise was that one could develop a scientific equation with a right answer, enabling managers and owners to operate factories in predictable, measurable ways. Eventually known as Taylorism, this approach to measuring production ushered in the assembly line system used to manufacture goods in the early 20th century. Over the next 100 years, it influenced all sorts of work, from retail to software production. As this became more widespread, military leaders, business schools, and management consultants developed operational and leadership models of productivity to accompany Taylor's approach. The command, control, optimize, and execute hierarchical organizational models derived from the understanding of problems as complicated. There was a right answer, and the most admired leaders had it. Taylorism produced some obvious fallacies, especially with the rise of professions where people were paid primarily to think, as opposed to assemble. The shift to knowledge work made using complicated methods like time and motion equations to judge productivity less useful. For example, it's hard to imagine that the effectiveness of the famous 1959 Think Small Volkswagen Beetle advertising campaign could have been calculated with a linear productivity equation that measured words per copywriter. Other fields, from management consulting to design, computer science, and software development, defied previously valid assessments of productivity, quality, or value based on Taylor's time and motion models. Early in my career, I was advised to come early to the office and stay late, not because it would produce better work, but because I would be regarded as a highly productive, committed, hard worker. I watched colleagues walk the halls, wearing their "I'm working hard" face, coincidentally timed for the manager to see them as they arrived at the office. Today, part of the debate about working from home versus returning to the office is framed as, how do I know my employees are working? This leads to misplaced choices, like measuring how long employees are at their computers or in virtual meetings, instead of measuring the outcomes of their work. This is a manifestation of the complicated model of productivity, where there is a linear relationship between time in office and "this is good" work. In contrast, what is now being considered as the future of work is that global, hybrid knowledge work doesn't assume a building. It enables us to think in new ways about defining work with purpose and impact. Complex problems. Complex problems consist of elements that are distinct from complicated problems. Samuel Arbsman, a complexity scientist, declares, complex is a large number of moving parts interacting in multifaceted ways. The interactions are less well understood, and the relationships are often nonlinear. Because the elements are interacting in multifaceted ways, you can't necessarily predict what the results of those interactions are going to be. Peter Ho is chairman of the Urban Redevelopment Authority in Singapore. His expertise on complexity informed his country's response to the threat of SARS in 2003, and he wrote, "The natural world is complex. In comparison, an engineering system, be it an airplane or a telecommunications satellite, is merely complicated. A complex system doesn't necessarily behave in a repeatable and predetermined manner. As a result, Not only may a change to one part of a complex system yield unexpected results, but these results may be hidden. Think of the impact on your commute time of an accident just before a merge into a tunnel. Not only is the main route clogged, but so are the side routes and your secret cut-throughs. Further, impatient drivers might start to take more risks, driving on the shoulders or swerving to jump lanes and causing new accidents. Many of these effects are out of your view, but they have significant impact on whether you arrive on time to your first meeting. Whether it is the complex queuing system you rely on to get to work on time, or the global supply chain, unexpected changes are difficult to plan for because of the sheer number of elements interacting in unpredictable ways. 20th century problems were, by and large, understood as complicated. I believe that our most urgent 21st century problems are complex. The problem is when a leader tries to address a complex problem with an approach designed for a complicated problem. The mismatch. When we apply complicated problem solving to complex problems, there's bound to be a mismatch. For example, problem solving in a complicated system is often about optimization, where the goal is to fine-tune a process to reduce wasted time, materials, errors, or friction while achieving the same outcome. For example, if I want to ensure I get exercise before going to work, I set my alarm, prep my water bottles, and lay out my workout clothes before going to bed. These are steps to optimize my system and reduce the likelihood that I will hit the snooze button. Returning to the example of building a plane, once a builder understands the relationships between the elements, from parts to suppliers to builders, the focus is appropriately on building systems to optimize different factors in construction. To focus on becoming efficient saves millions of dollars, and so very sophisticated systems manage these relationships. The key is the valid, tested knowledge of the interactions between each of the elements in the system. In contrast, complexity affects many industries, but I will focus on the industry where I am most familiar, software development. At one time, software was considered a linear process with well-understood inputs and outputs. As a result, it could be managed using the same tailor-derived principles. The waterfall method, named after the Gantt chart of successive blue bars of tasks stretched over a linear calendar, was the best practice from the days of mainframes. It gave managers the comfort of prediction and a stick to enforce compliance when the waterfall schedule went off kilter. The response to missed deadlines was to double down on the easiest variable to control: add more hours or add more workers. There are two significant assumptions in this methodology that do not account for complexity. The first assumption is that the relationship between those elements is correct. The second assumption is that there aren't any other factors affecting the system. Add a factor. You just hired 3 new engineers who are still learning. Your code becomes non-compliant due to a new regulation, or your customer needs a new feature to keep up with a competitor's latest release, and it throws the system completely off. The project becomes horribly late, way over budget, or is delivered to a customer who rejects it. As engineering leader Leslie Miley told me, systems can either be complicated or complex, with the latter exhibiting non-deterministic, unpredictable behavior. If your system is exhibiting the latter, perhaps it's time to rethink. In software development, one of the most influential responses to the unknown and unexpected of complex systems was iterative development, commonly referred to as Agile. Agile refers to the Agile Manifesto, developed over 3 days in 2001 by 17 industry thinkers and practitioners. Among many declarations, 2 of the key principles are individuals and interactions over processes and tools, and responding to change over following a plan, which is further elaborated as welcoming changing requirements, even late in development. Over the next 20 years, this framework has been adapted, codified, and most importantly, shown to deliver value, especially in complex systems. Putting people first while welcoming the unexpected is a powerful prescription in uncertain times with complex problems. It is no accident that these processes emerged at the same time that computing power was rapidly increasing in complexity, both in terms of scale and impact. Lean Startup extended the same type of thinking into the innovation and entrepreneur communities, bringing an explicit perspective of learning, like a scientist, into the creation of software, business models, and companies. Even organizations that embodied formal hierarchy, often called command and control, experienced the shift in leadership models and frameworks. For example, in Team of Teams, General Stanley McChrystal documents how the old centralized strategic model was repeatedly failing in Iraq. The Iraqis were more agile and consistently stymied the progress of his forces. Rather than adding more forces and more weapons, he shifted his model to allow different military units to create experiments, to engage enemy forces in their own way, and evolve their local knowledge. He invested in communication systems to accelerate rapid feedback and to spread successful experiments to other troops. It was this shift that enabled his forces to make significant progress. The principles of agility, communication, iteration, experiments, and rapid feedback are core practices to deal with complexity, uncertainty, and unknowns. In sum, we've inherited models of management, leadership, and performance that are based on the assumption that systems are complicated. We can predict how the elements in the system will interact, and there is a right answer. Unfortunately, this assumption is not effective in an era of increasing complexity, unpredictable elements, and diverse global stakeholders. The good news is that we can use a new framework to address complex issues and make better decisions, despite lots of unknowns and uncertainties. Let me introduce a story about one complex issue: diversity, inclusion, and equal pay, and our approach to addressing it using the core practices in Move to the Edge, Declare It Center. Case Study: Introducing Salary Transparency. Imagine your first day at work, and your business card looks like this. What would you think? Might you wonder, does everybody have their salaries displayed on their business card? Might you look around and ask yourself, how do I compare with other directors? I suspect you're definitely thinking, why on earth would a company do this? While we don't have our salaries on our business cards, we did make all salaries transparent in 2017. Why? We wanted to solve a complex problem: racial and gender inequality in compensation. In most labor markets, BIPOC people and people who identify with she, her pronouns get paid less than white men for doing the same job. It is an old, persistent problem, but we treated it as an obstacle we needed to overcome in order to build the diverse, inclusive company we wanted. There weren't many companies to emulate, and we couldn't find any that were doing it explicitly for diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, purposes. We were on the edge. Trust was founded with 67%.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?